Chapter 19. Full-Scale Assault. The night was heavy, the battlefield shrouded in deep darkness, with only scattered flames flickering in the distance, drifting like ghostly will-o'-the-wisps over the desolate land. The air was thick with the scent of blood and smoke, as if even the earth itself was forewarning the imminent slaughter and destruction. The battle begins, a three-pronged attack to break the defense. Outside the Black Armor Legion's encampment, an eerie silence blanketed the battlefield. However, under the cover of this silence, a force hidden in the shadows was slowly closing in. Their steps were soundless, yet their killing intent was as sharp as a blade. "Target locked," Osmond whispered from behind a boulder, issuing his order in a low voice. "Three-pronged assault. The first wave must break their defenses, or we'll be trapped here." Like a tidal wave, the rebel warriors surged forward, their battle cries shaking the night. Sharp blades gleamed coldly in the darkness. The ambush caught the Black Armor Legion completely off guard. Their frontline soldiers were torn apart in an instant, blood staining the sand as screams of agony echoed across the battlefield. The main rebel forces pressed forward from the front, while archers unleashed a relentless barrage of arrows from both flanks, forcing the Black Armor Legion into defensive positions. "Quick! Sound the alarm!" A Black Armor soldier barely had time to raise his horn before an arrow pierced his throat. His body stiffened, and the warning cry died on his lips. Not far away, Osmond gave a swift signal. A tactical unit had already infiltrated the rear of the Black Armor Legion, igniting the buried explosives. A thunderous explosion erupted. Firelight surged into the sky, tearing open a breach in the enemy's camp. "Charge in!" Alya leapt onto her warhorse, her silver-white sword gleaming in the glow of the fire. Her gaze was resolute as she formed hand seals, unleashing an eerie black mist. The aura of the undead spread rapidly, twisting into formless shadows that seeped into the Black Armor Legion's ranks. Tactical deployment, undead magic and strategic spell formations. "Block their movements," Osmond commanded. Several rebel mages swiftly took their positions, tracing intricate runes on the ground. Boom. A chilling pulse spread outward as the tactical spell formation activated. Chains of light surged into the air, forming an invisible barrier that trapped the frontline Black Armor soldiers within its grasp. Meanwhile, Alya stepped onto the battlefield, inhaling deeply as her pupils shimmered with an eerie blue glow. The whispers of the undead echoed in her ears, and shadows slithered at her fingertips like restless phantoms. With a flick of her wrist, undead magic. Shadow corruption. Activated. Countless black spectral claws erupted from the ground, latching onto the legs of the Black Armor soldiers. Those caught in their grasp collapsed in agony, their eyes filled with terror. "A monster! This is demonic power! Hold your ground!" The Black Armor Legion's centurion roared, but it was too late. Alya's power spread like an unstoppable tide, shattering the enemy's front lines. Their formation fractured, and the rebels seized the opportunity to break through. The Black Armor Legion's counterattack, Wren and Night Owl strike. Just as the rebels seemed on the verge of overwhelming the Black Armor Legion, a lone figure stepped onto the battlefield. Rain. His black armor gleamed coldly in the firelight. With a single hand gripping his sword, he stood atop the ruins like a silent war deity. His sharp gaze swept across the battlefield before settling on Alya. "That's enough." His voice wasn't loud, yet it cut through the chaos like thunder, reaching every corner of the battlefield. In an instant, a powerful arc of black sword energy slashed across the field, severing all traces of undead energy. The spectral claws around Alya shattered into wisps of black smoke, dissipating into nothingness. "Rain!" Alya snapped her head up, her expression one of shock. "The rebels will advance no further." Wren's voice was calm, yet his black sword traced a deadly arc through the air, radiating an electrifying battle aura. At the same time, a voice rang out from the distance. "Kill them!" It was Night Owl. Seated high on the command platform, his expression remained indifferent, as if the entire battlefield was merely a chessboard under his control. Lehn raised his sword. The soldiers of the Black Armor Legion, as if reinvigorated by his presence, swiftly reassembled into formation. A renewed killing intent surged through their ranks, sweeping across the battlefield like an invisible force. The battle had truly reached its climax. Alya and Lehn locked eyes, the flames of war burning between them. A fateful confrontation was now inevitable. Meanwhile, observing the battlefield from afar, Osmond's brows furrowed as he murmured, "Something's wrong." The Black Armor Legion reacted too quickly. It's as if they knew we were going to attack. A smirk tugged at Night Owl's lips as he muttered under his breath, "The prey has finally taken the bait." The true shift in the battle had only just begun. As night fell, the Black Armored Legion's defensive line stood like an impenetrable fortress, blocking the path of the rebel forces. However, just as the flames of battle ignited, a ghostly blue light suddenly surged from the center of the battlefield, spreading like a tide. It was Alya's undead power, an abyssal coldness that enveloped the battlefield in a deathly silence. The arrival of the Nether Phantom Dragon. The sky was abruptly torn apart by a deafening roar that echoed across the battlefield, as if it came from the very depths of the abyss. Beneath the shroud of night, the form of the Nether Phantom Dragon emerged. Its massive body coiled above the battlefield, spectral blue flames flowing between its scales, while its eyes gleamed with an unearthly, ruthless light. Each beat of its wings sent out a destructive gale, striking fear into the hearts of the Black Armored Legion soldiers. Standing at the center of the battlefield, Alya's long hair was swept up by the raging winds. Her eyes burned with undead energy as she raised her hand ever so slightly. Instantly, the dragon's breath descended like a storm of thunder. Azure flames devoured the ground, carving a deep rift into the Black Armored Legion's front line. Soldiers screamed as they fell, their armor twisting and melting under the searing heat of the necrotic fire, leaving behind charred corpses. The rebel forces, emboldened by the chaos, pushed forward with renewed vigor. But Alya's gaze was already fixed on a figure ahead. Lehn stood on the other side of the battlefield, gripping his sword, his black cloak billowing violently in the storm. Lenn's hesitation. Lehn watched everything in silence, his grip tightening around his sword hilt until his knuckles turned white. Never before had he seen Alya in such a formidable state. She stood like a true war goddess, commanding a dragon of death. Her presence was cold, domineering, like the incarnation of a necromancer king. And yet, as he witnessed this sight, an unfamiliar tremor ran through his heart. "Lehn." General Night Owl's voice cut through the battlefield's clamor, low and commanding. "Your mission is to stop her." Lehn hesitated for a brief moment before slowly drawing his sword. The blade gleamed coldly in the reflection of the necrotic flames. He knew he had to make a choice. Lehn and Alya's confrontation, no. Words were exchanged, only the instinct of battle driving them forward. Alya struck first. She wielded her necrotic longsword, the blade wreathed in ghostly blue flames, slashing toward Lehn like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, Lehn vanished from sight, his speed surpassing the limits of human perception. Evading the attack, he countered with a sweeping strike, sending a razor-sharp arc of black energy slicing toward Alya's chest. Behind her, the Nether Phantom Dragon let out a deep snarl and dove down, sweeping its colossal claws through the air. The sheer force of its attack shattered Lenn's assault, sending shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. The impact drove soldiers stumbling backward, unable to withstand the clash of such immense powers. Lehn leaped through the swirling dust and smoke, his sword thrusting straight for Alya's throat. But just as he was about to land the strike, his movements faltered, just for an instant. Alya saw it. She did not hesitate. Spinning around, she swung her blade in a swift arc, slashing toward Lenn's shoulder. Clang! Ren staggered backward, his black armor splitting apart where the undead energy had torn through it. He lifted his gaze and locked eyes with Alya. "You held back," Alya murmured, her voice laced with a complicated emotion. Rain did not answer. He simply stared at her, his sword trembling ever so slightly in his grasp. With every exchange of blows, his heart grew clearer. Could he truly bring himself to strike her down? General Night Owl's observation. From a distance, General Night Owl observed the battle, his fingers tapping lightly against the hilt of his sword. His eyes, sharp as a blade, took in every detail, especially Rain's hesitation. "I see," Night Owl murmured, a cold smile curling his lips. This battle was far from over. The altars change. The undead seal nears. Its undoing. The sounds of battle roared across the battlefield, yet at its very center, an ancient and ominous black altar slowly emerged, its surface lined with eerie magical inscriptions. Towering, stone pillars bore intricate glyphs that glowed with an uncanny blue light, as though some forbidden entity was on the verge of awakening. Vivian stood at the forefront of the altar, surrounded by chanting sorcerers, whose incantations wove an obscure and unfathomable spell. Dark magic surged around them, flowing like a living entity through the air, striving to unseal the ancient taboo. However, the ritual remained incomplete. It lacked the final key. Blood. Not enough. We're missing the last step. Vivian furrowed her brows, sensing the ritual's stagnation. Her gaze slowly shifted toward the battlefield. Her eyes locked onto Alya. Alya's blood was the missing element that would complete the ritual. Night Owl's command atop, a vantage point on the battlefield. Night Owl's black cloak billowed in, the fierce wind. His cold eyes scrutinized the flow of dark magic around the altar before shifting to Alya, whose undead aura enveloped her like a deathly shroud. He was in no hurry. Everything was within his control. Rain. His voice was deep, filled with an unquestionable authority. Across the battlefield, Ren stood motionless, gripping his sword tightly, his gaze fixed on Alya with a mix of emotions. Night Owl noticed his hesitation. A cold smirk played across his lips as he spoke again, his tone void of emotion. "Capture Alya and bring her to the altar." It was an order, an imperial decree that could not be defied. The air grew heavy as soldiers around them held, their breath awaiting Ren's response. Alya's gaze bore into him, unwavering. Behind her, the nether drake let out a low growl, its blue flames flickering within its draconic eyes. Ren said nothing. The moonlight glinted coldly off his sword. Ren's choice time seemed to stretch infinitely in that moment. Ren's fingers tightened around his sword hilt, his gaze shifting between Alya and Night Owl. Past oaths, imperial loyalty, orders of slaughter, Alya's struggles, all flashed through his mind in a chaotic storm. She is merely an experiment. Night Owl had once told him. Her fate is not her own to decide. Ren had always believed in the Empire's doctrines, in the meaning behind every battle, in the vision of a greater future. But now, doubt crept into his heart. Alya stood before him, resolute and unyielding, undead power surging through her veins. She was no mere experiment. She was a warrior, a soul with her own will. And what about him? Was he merely a tool of the Empire? Ren, execute the order. Night Owl's voice rang out, as cold and absolute as a death sentence. Ren inhaled deeply, gripping his sword tighter as he slowly raised it. Everyone believed he was about to strike at Alya. But in the next instant, clang! Ren's sword swung in an arc, its blade turning away from Alya, and instead, it pointed directly at Night Owl. A hush fell over the battlefield, shock rippling through the soldiers. Their expressions froze in disbelief. ran. Night owls, eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous glint flickering within them. Ren exhaled steadily. His voice was calm, yet carried an unshakable resolve. I won't let you succeed. The battle turns. Rain's rebellion, Night Owl's expression finally shifted, his eyes sharpening into a razor's edge. He had foreseen this possibility. Interesting. He chuckled softly, his voice laced with amusement. So you choose betrayal? I choose to fight. Ren's voice was steady, his blade unwavering as his battle spirit surged like a tempest across the field. The soldiers of the black-armored legion exchanged bewildered glances. Never had they seen Ren defy orders. Meanwhile, the resistance. Forces erupted in thunderous cheers. Rain has turned against them. Their ranks are crumbling. Seizing the opportunity, the resistance forces launched an even fiercer assault, quickly shifting the tides of battle. Night Owl let out a cold snort, his gaze drifting from Ren to the battlefield's growing chaos. A foolish decision, he muttered, before slowly raising his hand. Since you insist on death, I will grant your wish myself. The night was as dark as ink, and the battlefield was drenched in blood. Ren's betrayal had momentarily disrupted the balance, allowing the rebels to seize the momentum and launch a fierce assault. The tide of battle seemed to be turning in their favor. However, standing atop the battlefield, Night Owl watched with a slight smirk at the corner of his lips. How foolish, his voice echoed in the night wind, laced with disdain and mockery. I knew you would betray me from the start. Ren gripped his longsword tightly, his expression grave as he locked eyes with Night Owl. He had prepared for the worst, yet the general's reaction sent an unsettling chill through his heart. Did you really think that your betrayal alone could change the course of this battle? Night Owl's gaze was abyssal, devoid of warmth. He slowly raised his hand. This game ends now. The air tensed abruptly, as a surge of violent magic rippled through the battlefield. The black-armored legion's second wave, the true killing trap, begins. Suddenly, from the surrounding darkness, countless armored figures emerged from the shadows, elite forces of the black-armored legion, the Shadowfang unit. They were the Empire's most ruthless executioners, an army forged for the sole purpose of eradicating rebels. They had been lurking at the battlefield's edge, waiting in complete silence, until Night Owl's command was given. Now they had finally revealed themselves. Dressed in black armor inlaid with silver, their faces concealed behind grotesque demon masks, the Shadowfang warriors wielded curved blades and short crossbows. With lightning speed, they stormed into the fray. Eliminate every last rebel. Night Owl's order was merciless. In an instant, the rebel army's flank was torn apart. The battle took a drastic turn. The rebels, who moments ago had the upper hand, now found themselves ensnared in Night Owl's grand scheme. The Shadowfang warriors had sealed off their escape routes from 3 directions, while the black-armored legion's main forces launched a counteroffensive. Within moments, the rebels, once dominant, plunged into despair. Osmond clutched his spear, roaring, "Damn it! We've fallen into their trap!" Blood spilled across the battlefield as the rebel formation crumbled. Morale wavered. Alya's struggle. A life-and-death decision. Alya's undead magic erupted across the battlefield. The nether drake coiled in the night sky, its blue flames blazing within its eyes. With every thunderous roar, swaths of black-armored soldiers were sent flying. Yet, even so, she could feel it. The battle was slipping completely out of control. Her comrades were falling back under the merciless slaughter of the Shadowfang unit. The rebel defenses were on the brink of collapse. Damn it. Alya gritted her teeth, fury burning in her gaze. She knew that if the battle wasn't turned around soon, they would all die. Just as she was about to rush to the front lines, an overwhelming presence suddenly locked onto her. Night Owl had set his sights on her. Alya's pupils shrank. Instinct kicked in, and she dodged immediately. Whoosh! A black blade streaked past her, narrowly grazing her cheek. The ground where she had stood was slashed open, leaving a bottomless fissure. She snapped her head up. Night. Owl was approaching at an unhurried pace, his black cloak billowing in the wind. His gaze was as cold as death itself. "You are the key piece," Night Owl said, his tone void of emotion. "Surrender, or die." Alya clenched her fists. The power of the undead surged within her, and the nether drake roared behind her, its flames burning fiercely in the air. She stood her ground. "I won't let you win." She clasped her hands together, unleashing a surge of undead energy. The nether drake soared, and a storm of deathly flames surged toward Night Owl, and yet Night Owl didn't even draw his sword. He simply raised a single finger. A deafening explosion shook the battlefield. Boom! Alya's magic shattered mid-air. A powerful force sent her flying, slamming her into a crumbling stone pillar. A trickle of blood escaped her lips. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she looked at Night Owl. He had crushed her magic effortlessly, without even using his full strength. Too weak. His voice was calm, indifferent. In the blink of an eye, he vanished. The next second, he was behind her. His sword, aimed directly at her heart. Ren's shock, the truth revealed. "Alya." Ren's heart clenched. He saw Night Owl's blade strike toward her, but found himself frozen, unable to move in time. And at that moment, he finally understood. Night Owl had never truly trusted him. From the beginning, he had merely been a pawn to be used. By assigning him the task of capturing Alya, Night Owl had forced him into making a choice, exposing his hesitation to everyone. The moment he betrayed the Empire, Night Owl would spring his deadliest trap, ensuring the complete annihilation of the rebels. It had all been planned from the start. "So, you were waiting for me to make this mistake," Reen murmured, his fists clenched, rage surging through his veins. Night Owl didn't turn back. His sword was about to pierce Alya's chest. But at that very moment, clang! A longsword suddenly intercepted the strike, sparks flying upon impact. Ren had moved at last. His sword blocked Night Owl's, shielding Alya behind him. His gaze was cold and resolute. Night Owl raised an eyebrow, finally regarding Ren properly. "So, you've come to your senses?" Ren said nothing, but his eyes spoke volumes. He had made his choice. He was no longer the Empire's blade. He would protect Alya, even if it meant standing against the entire black-armored legion. Now, the battle had reached its most intense climax. A fight to the death was inevitable.